In Chapter 15, titled Civil Rights, you mention a 1983 survey by the Department of Education could not turn up a single study that found integrated schooling to have any appreciable effect on a Black educational achievement. What are the main omissions about the civil rights era that people should know about?
I elaborate further on that in my book, such a terrible title, 33 Questions About American History You're Not Supposed to Ask. I can't even have my eyes open when I say that terrible title. So there is further information in that book, but in the Politically Incorrect Guide, I don't remember which book I say which, so I don't want to disappoint anybody. Get both books. But I have a blog post at tomwoods.com that has really stood the test of time. It gets a lot of link clicks even now, and it's from like 12 years ago. But in there, really, I was quoting Thomas Sowell and talking about some of his work. And he says that in terms of things like employment, of course the government wants to take credit when Black achievement improves and, let's say, employment outcomes improve. They want to say, well, of course, that's because we passed this legislation. But what he points out is, he says, but the thing is, the growth of Black employment, particularly in professional fields, in high-paying fields, we see this happening in 1949 to 1940 to 49, 49 to 59, even before the real heyday of the Civil Rights Revolution, which was in the 60s. We see no acceleration of it. And then he lists some statistics about the year before the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the trend in Black employment in various levels, and then says it was much stronger that one year than it was in the 2 years after the Civil Rights Act was passed. He says, so we have to be careful about attributing everything to government action. But we're inclined to do that because it seems to make sense. The government passed a law called, like the Help Blacks law, in effect, so therefore must have helped them, And we're very inclined to do that because we do it all the time. We do it with things like the OSHA about occupational safety and health. And occupational safety and health absolutely improved after OSHA was introduced. So we think, oh, well, all right, I guess it did some good. But what we don't bother to look at, as Sowell would say, is, but what was happening before? What was the existing trend? And the existing trend was already downward. The existing trend was actually more steeply downward in the 25 years before OSHA than it was in the 25 years after. But since nobody knows about that half of the story, they think, well, you see those stupid right-wingers who don't want regulation. They don't understand all the good that it does. Well, but it's that they don't understand that there are already safeguards in place, market pressures that tend to produce the same outcome and already were. And so likewise, his argument is that we already saw tremendous strides that Black people who made those strides deserve the credit for, and not have it be said that, well, I mean, of course they were going to succeed because the government fixed everything for them. He said that's not a helpful way to look at history. It's cartoonish.
Okay, one more. I lied. I have to do one more. Okay. You mention a number of countries, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, a lot of groups that have gone from impoverished to successful. Right now, the plan for Black America by the Democrats mostly is reparations, more school funding, K through 12, and more college education, more food stamps. Biden mentioned a Black-only $10,000 tax credit if you buy a house. Are any of the things that are being advocated for Black Americans something that have lifted other groups out of poverty?
None of that. I mean, none of that. And I know that you're asking me these, as these kinds of questions as as an interviewer. So I know that you know the answer. But I mean, basically, what lifted those countries out of poverty was it was free trade, for one thing. I mean, obviously, a place like Hong Kong, how are you going to survive without free trade? You're going to make everything in Hong Kong? Come on. So they realized that it's indispensable to have it. So that was one thing. But basically, freeing up the economies, making it possible for people to take part in the economy with fewer restrictions. So not a high minimum wage necessarily, or make it easy to have for people to open businesses. I mean, these sorts of things are not hard to figure out. I mean, when you look at the countries that have succeeded, they have property rights that are secure. They have a legal system that's at least moderately reliable. They're not nationalizing property and distributing the gains to people, or they're not engaging in weird land reform projects, or they're just freeing the markets. And even in this day and age, people are skeptical of the market economy more than they were before. But the facts are facts. I mean, this is what brought these countries out of poverty in case after case. So, and one of the points that Thomas Sowell makes in his great book, Civil Rights, Rhetoric or Reality, one of those points is that the pattern that we've seen in American history is not that a particular ethnic or racial group enters politics and then succeeds. He says the Irish, that's not how it worked for them. They got right into politics and they absolutely lagged behind. He says they get into politics afterward, if at all. And if they do get into politics, like with Asian Americans, generally they do so with a message tailored more to the general good than to racial grievance. And that seems to have worked a lot better. So it really is the Booker T. Washington argument all over again. He's basically right. The state does not make you prosperous, and relying on it doesn't make you prosperous, and victimhood doesn't make you prosperous.
Yes, and I love Sowell's point in that book about how after being released from concentration camps, the Japanese by 1959 had incomes that were at white levels, and by 1969, Japanese immigrants had exceeded white incomes. So just none of the economic or military narratives that the state gives us ever hold up. That's why I wholeheartedly recommend this book. So once you make a donation to the Libertarian Institute at libertarianinstitute.org, go check out the Politically Incorrect Guide to American History.
Hey, you all, it's fundraising time again at the Libertarian Institute. We try not to do this to you too often, but business is business after all. I got a great group of guys and a gal at the Institute, and I got to pay them. So just go to libertarianinstitute.org/donate to pick your price and help out. We've got some great kickbacks too, books and shirts. Great ones. That's libertarianinstitute.org/donate. And thank you all very much.